Welcome to the channel. This is a high mileage review of a 2005 Chrysler 300C. Now I'd like to make a little disclaimer. I'm not a mechanic, not a car expert. I just like cars, owned a bunch of different cars, and I've owned a lot of high mileage cars. So we're going to take a look at this particular Chrysler that has 207,000 miles on it. I bought it with 195,000, and we're going to see what all I've done to it over the past 12,000 miles in 8 or 9 months. Let's take a walk around the outside. The Chrysler 300C was probably the most exciting car of 2005 when it was released. It offered 340 horsepower from a 5.7 liter Hemi V8 and 390 pound-feet of torque from the factory. This is all original on the outside, I believe, other than the Challenger or Charger, I'm not sure which they are, wheels that have been added. The paint on this car has held up extremely well, and as far as I can tell, it is all original. You'll have to excuse the muddiness, but it is winter in Pennsylvania, and there's no possible way that you can get a car that isn't muddy at this time. Now, even though the paint has held up very well, I can't say the same for all of the chrome on the vehicle. I've already replaced 3 of the door handles due to either breaking or chrome peeling, and I have another one starting to peel now, as well as the chrome is peeling now on the back bumper. And you'll see that this is a feature that also goes to the inside and the interior, which we'll look at in a minute. And it's peeling all here, so I need new door handles. The last thing I wanted to mention about the exterior is rust. This car has spent most of its life in the Northeast. I live in Pennsylvania. I bought it out of New Jersey, and it has almost zero rust on it. So if that's a concern of yours, they seem to handle up very well to rust issues. The 5.7 liter Hemi still runs remarkably well after 207,000 miles. The only major issue I have right now is valve cover gaskets. It is leaking oil out of the valve cover gaskets, especially on this left side. But that is about a $30 part and maybe an hour or so to fix. So not a big issue there either. I can't tell that really, other than a K&N filter, that any work has ever been done to this engine. The most common issue with these engines that I'm aware of is valve seal failure. I know it will drop valve seals, especially on the earlier ones, I think up until like 2008. I'm not as familiar with the newer ones, but I know that they did update the heads later. I assume that it either is not going to happen on this one or it's already been fixed, because 207,000 miles, it's definitely not getting fixed by me. Now, another thing mechanically related, though not an actual mechanical problem, is exhaust. The flex pipe that comes down from the catalytic converter on these is weak and has frequently breaks. It was broken on this one originally, and it actually just made the car sound kind of nice, just a little rumble to it, but then as time wore on, it got worse and worse until the point where I had to get it fixed. Here's a clip of what the car used to sound like. And now here's a clip of what the car sounds like now. One of the things they say the Chrysler Hemi is famous for is having a little bit of a tick, but I don't hear anything other than just a quiet, smooth engine after 207,000 miles. Let's take a look at the interior. The interior at this point has held up fairly well. There's some cheap plastic and things that I can't really excuse them for, and more of that chrome peeling is evident inside as well on every door panel. The seats, though no rips or tears, have shown a fair amount of wear. Whether it's evident on camera or not, I'm not sure, but it has, even with the high mileage, has shown a little bit more wear than some other cars I've had with even higher miles than this one. Now, a few other spots of wear. The steering wheel, the wood, which you may not be able to see, has cracked the whole way along the top of the steering wheel. There's hairline cracks all through the wood finish on it, as well as the dash has warped pretty severely up at the front edge where the sun hits it. Overall, the interior is just okay. For as beautiful as Chrysler made the outside of the car, the interior just doesn't feel up to snuff. The door panels and all of those things seem to feel okay. The dash seems like they just took it out of a truck of some sort and put it in here with no real thought. And there's lots of cheap plasticky bits, and the center console rattles like. But overall, even though the interior isn't perfect, most cars back in this age weren't great either. And it's definitely as good or better than most vehicles of this era. Now, I waited towards the end to tell you about my absolute least favorite thing about this car, and you'll find this across all of the forums, all the reviews. Anywhere you'll see that these cars have suspension issues. And mine is not an exception to the rule. Control arms, tie rods, inner tie rods, outer tie rods, bushings, anything to do with the suspension on this vehicle wears out extremely quickly. They're just junk from the factory. Now, I don't know if you buy Moog or a high-end brand and put that on, how long it lasts. That's what I've done with this so far, and none of those parts have failed yet, but it's only 12,000 miles, so I don't know if it's just the overall design of the suspension or just extremely cheap parts from the factory. So basically anything rubber that is underneath this car sucks. And you will end up replacing it sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you'll end up with tires that look like this. You can see here how much more this outer edge is worn than this one, and this was due to bad upper ball joints on the control arms. And it's not just wearing tires out either. It's constant shakes, rattles, clunks all the time in this vehicle. And I just need to keep replacing parts, and I probably should have done it all at once, like I just suggested a minute ago. But that's not the route I took. I tried to replace one thing at a time, and it has come back to bite me because I have just constantly been chasing different rattles and things. So now we're to the part of the video where I break it down for you. I bought the car for a little over $2,200. I thought $2,200 for 340 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque, you really can't beat that. Then I've had some other people that I knew who had these cars or other, versions of them, and they had gotten 230, 240, 250,000 miles out of them. And by all indications, it seems like this one will do the same exact thing. I don't think mechanically that any big issues are coming. However, there is the little nickel and diming stuff that you get with a car of 200,000 plus miles. This one I put more parts on, probably, than other vehicles that I've had, even with 200,000 miles, but I still have found myself to fall in love with the car. So I bought the car for $2,200. Immediately upon buying it, like the first time I filled it up on the way home, I realized that the fuel tank was junk. However, there's a recall for the fuel tank. There's a float valve in there that won't allow the car to run after you fill the car up. So that's a very common problem, but there is a recall for it. It usually takes 2 to 3 weeks to get the tank in because they're back ordered. After that, I replaced the exhaust flex pipes because of how loud the car was, and that was about $90. After that, I replaced both upper control arms and both bushings for the sway bar, which did eliminate most of the clunking in the steering. I think that was about $125. I also replaced the airbag clock spring to get rid of the airbag light, which didn't fix it. So I think I broke it as I was putting it back together, but that was $50. I also replaced the fuel pump that was $50. I also replaced 3 of the door handles because 3 were completely broken off of the vehicle, and that was about $30. They were about $10 a piece. I've also had multiple fuses blow at different times. I'm not sure what that's about. It doesn't seem to be anything super consistent or a short or anything anywhere. The battery holds charge, all of those things. But I just had to replace the one for the interior lights, and I've had to replace a few other ones, maybe 2, since I've had it in the last 8 months. But I haven't ever really replaced a lot of fuses on any other cars, so I found that a little odd. So at this time, I still do need to replace both the inner and outer tie rods. I need to replace probably anything else to do with all the links and everything to do with the front suspension. And I probably will do a new power steering pump at the same time, just because I've noticed that it's a little inconsistent, especially when it's cold outside. It seems like it's working too hard. The total for whatever all those parts are is down below, and that's my total cost of ownership for this car for 8 or 9 months, and the car is still worth $2,500. So my overall thoughts on the car are definitely buy it if you can find one for the right price. Like I said, I paid $2,200 for this car. You cannot beat 340 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque for $2,200. You can't find that anywhere. As well as it's still one of the most beautiful vehicles on the road, and one of the most comfortable, most spacious, and overall practical. So that's my review of a 2005 Chrysler 300C with 207,000 miles on it. If you like this video, please subscribe, like, and share. Have a great day.